implementing choices and trying to identify the issues that portfolio managers face when managing a portfolio, either strategically or tactically there. To put it into perspective, because we are learning about asset allocation, trying to allocate funds to specific asset classes. Asset classes could be bonds, stocks, cash, derivatives, alternative investments, and so forth. We need to understand how we are going to apply implementation strategies onto strategic asset allocation, implementing strategies to tactical asset allocation. What is this strategic and tactical asset allocation? In brief, strategic asset allocation can best be explained as follows. You try and formulate the portfolio over here, not trying, saying that you formulate the portfolio right over there. This formulation requires 3 steps. Portfolio management process. Number 1, planning step, where you try and identify options or asset classes that you intend to invest in. Number 2, execution step. Planning step, execution step. Under execution step, what happens is that now you actually invest in the asset classes which have been identified as to meet the objectives of the portfolio, and which are actually constructed under the planning step there. So execution is where you actively engage or actively invest in those asset classes, stocks, bonds, and maybe cash or alternatives. The third and final step, portfolio management process, is feedback. Feedback right over there, or what we can say, monitoring and rebalancing. And rebalancing. Put a small arrow there, rebalancing. This is, of course, a very key topic under advanced portfolio, and we are going to learn more or very incisive details about how we can be able to monitor and rebalance the portfolio. But for now, this is what we say the portfolio management process. Under the planning step, what is needed is that we need to identify either the strategic asset allocation or tactical asset allocation. So we try and formulate the objectives against constraints there. The objectives of a portfolio are risk and return. So here is risk right over there. I can make it much more clearer. Risk, return, that and that there. The constraints include the liquidity, legal, time, taxes, and unique circumstances there. We had already identified the objectives and the constraints, and we expressively explained what they actually what they actually mean under different institutional investors. So the institutional investors in this case could be commercial banks, could be insurance companies, could be foundations, endowments, and so on and so forth. So please go back to that lesson or that lecture that we had actually covered the objectives and constraints for those institutional investors. So what I'm trying to explain now is this portfolio management process over here, in the context of strategic asset allocation, has a long-term view. So for strategic asset allocation, it has a long-term view. The feedback or the monitoring and rebalancing takes place after a very long period of time. Once you formulate the portfolio right over here, you go to the planning, execution, the feedback or the monitoring and rebalancing takes place after some time. Because the feedback takes place after some long period of time, we are saying that the markets tend to move or tend to undulate, so on and so forth like that. And proper analysis or proper allocation or proper rebalancing is actually needed to take place much more frequently. But you see, rebalancing requires, it comes at a cost. So monitoring and rebalancing needs to take place based on the investment committee's recommendations, maybe say every 6 months, And so if the market is very volatile, then it actually requires to be done much more frequently. So simply put, strategic asset allocation has a long-term view and before considering a monitoring and rebalancing. How about tactical asset allocation? Tactical asset allocation requires the analyst, or the portfolio manager, or the investment banker to have a series. Once you formulate the portfolio over here, you monitor and rebalance after a short period of time, monitor and rebalance, and so on and so forth, frequently. Like that. It comes at a cost, but you're saying because the market tends to undulate like so, the pest factors, pestel factors, political, economic, social, cultural, technological, ecological, and legal environment keep on changing. Right now, we're talking about blockchain. Blockchain technology is coming to really change the way the financial services industry is actually going to be formed. I'm actually informed that now when you go to some commercial banks in developed economies, you find that you don't even really need to have tellers right over there. So that's actually creating some form of disruption within the financial services industry there. Political tensions in Kenya, 2022, and we expect it to go through an electioneering cycle. So that is going to affect, say, the investment performance of some of the funds that portfolio managers actually invest in, like that, and so on and so forth. So because the market moves like so, constant monitoring and rebalancing is required, or frequent meetings with the investment committee to give them permission to actually either overweight and underweight in some sectors is actually allowed, like that, over the life of the portfolio, like so. So tactical has frequent monitoring and rebalancing stages. Strategic has got maybe fewer monitoring and rebalancing stages there.